authoritative resource on the authentic history of Africa and African life. It is a tool to guide and unite Africans in the development with foundations in all aspects of the African life, including history, legal, economic, religion, architecture, and education, as well as the systems and practices of African societies. Program Director, these are important interventions in the process of galvanizing Pan-African identity and unity towards the realization of African agenda. And they are central to us realizing our vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. The overview of AU's aspiration has identified 7 key issues, and the fifth one states that Africa with strong cultural identity, common heritage values, and ethics is one of those things that we should be striving for. Hence, it speaks to these specific issues. Fellow Africans, the achievement of the OAU of the AU's aspirations are dependent on the development of an African nation. In order to have a common understanding of what a nation is, let me refer to you to Stalin's definition as quoted by Moses Kotane, that quote, a nation is a historically evolved, stable community of language, territory, economic life, and psychological makeup manifested in a community of culture. It goes therefore without saying that a nation, like every other historical phenomenon, is subject to the law of change, as its history, its beginning, and I guess an end, because this is subject to the whole question of evolution. The key question is how to galvanize the social agency of the masses to advance the realization of the African agenda. We have organs to assist us to achieve the objective of the African Union. One of these is the Pan-African Parliament, PAP, a continental parliament that South Africa has had the privilege to host, as we do. It is intended as a platform for people from all over Africa, all African states, to be involved in discussions and decision making on the problems and challenges facing the continent. Long live African unity, long live.
Long live.
Deputy Speaker, are you there?
I am, Madam Deputy Chairperson, and thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Masondo, for that informative overview. I just wanted to say that the Speaker and yourself have provided useful foundations for our discussion this morning in a facilitative manner. And the professor there has done what is absolutely informative, a challenging presentation, and thought-provoking naturally. And there are questions that I know many of us listening here today have. I'd like to suggest that, firstly, before I open for those with us today to ask a few questions, and then move towards wrapping this useful seminar around. That in the professor's beginning, the question by Ali Mazrui, now that the colonial powers have departed, which is where he began and then ended, I want to ask the question, did they really ever leave? And secondly, the wish that they go away, is that really practical? Will they ever go away? And finally, others did not care. is that really accurate? The Southern African struggles and the aspiration for achievement was made with the help of many others. And in fact, who demonstrated that they care? We asked Namibia, Angola, and South Africa how we got out of the mess that we were in under them. So we really would like, when we do this, questions and so on, my responsibility is to now invite the questions. Are there any? I'll be assisted before we allow the Deputy Chair to speak. Is that the correct order?
Yes, Chair, it is the correct order.
Okay. Please let me know who is asking questions.
First is Honorable Dango.
Please go ahead, identify them, 2 or 3 of them, and then we can go to the next round here.
It's Honorable Dango first, Honorable Hanif Hendricks, Honorable Papo, and the Speaker.
Okay, thank you. In that order, please, let's hear. Mohammed?
Yeah, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Speaker, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Professor, and all protocols observed. Having been deployed to the hotspot—
Can I just, Mohammed? Please, every other person who's going to ask questions, we have had your protocols. They were done on your behalf by those who spoke before you. So proceed straight to your question. We won't think you are rude if you don't observe the protocols. It's fine. Okay. Thank you very much.
Having been deployed in the hotspots in the last 15 years, the last being Libya, before, during the killing of Gaddafi, and after the killing of Gaddafi, I asked myself many questions. The collapse of Libya, and I was then deployed to go into Mali to find the people that were kidnapped. The collapse of Libya was not a question of an Arab or North African Spring. It was a NATO-led invasion supported by some Libyans, as Libyans characterize it today. And what had happened there is, why are people fighting in Libya today? They have the same faith, they have the same school of thought. The fight is really about resources. Who controls the vast resources of Libya? And the questions that I always ask myself, is there good solidarity and bad solidarity? Good solidarity would be African and human solidarity. Bad solidarity becomes the solidarity when it's exploited of clan, of language, of tribe, for the curse of resources so that other people can exploit it. What I appeal for you today, and I appeal to Africans today, is that we need to, on this day, that is the day of Eid, celebrated by half of Africa today, is that let us banish from Africa the poverty of mind, the poverty of soul, and the poverty of not having food. Let us silence the guns. And how do we silence the guns? We need to go in there in a developmental strategy as Africa, ensuring that we develop Africa, that nobody goes hungry and that nobody fights over everything. In that, I think what we need to do further as South Africa in the Security Council at the moment is to look, and the President has correctly identified the areas that are hotspots that he's going to go into. What role can South Africa and Africa play in Libya? What role can South Africa and Africa play in Sudan? What role can South Africa and Africa play in Somalia? What role can Africa and Africa play in the Central African region? If we are going to do that, we are going to develop together and we are going to find solutions. With that, thank you very much, Chairperson. I don't want to take too much of your time. And let me wish those that are celebrating Eid today a very happy Eid. Thank you very much.
Eid Mubarak, as you say, Mohammed. Thank you very much. Can we have the next speaker? Can I allow the speaker to come first, and then Hope Papo and Honorable Nyami? Monica?
Honorable Deputy Speaker, is it my turn to speak?
Who's there?
It's Honorable Hendricks.
No, but you heard me say calling for the Honorable Speaker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I requested that we allow her to ask, and then you will follow in the order that I suggested. I made a mistake earlier. Then you will follow and Hope Papo, and yeah, in the order.
Okay. Deputy Speaker.
There?
Deputy Speaker.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
I don't really want to ask a question, but I wanted to say to Professor, more than 10 years ago, the former armed women of Africa came together. And we made a position and we sent a delegation to the UN to try and, firstly, in our own countries, South Africa received a deputation from ourselves to say that the peacekeeping forces of Africa, at least, must have a third of them comprised of women. After our experience in Rwanda, that has not been carried through. And also to just say that South Africa's busyness and proactiveness in trying to keep peace and to help stabilize has actually over the years diminished simply because we as Parliament have not kept our eye on the ball as to the resourcing and continually replenishing the skills of the South African peacekeeping forces to ensure that indeed we do what we started off doing. So it would be important for us to begin to go back to the fundamentals. If you want to silence the guns, what are the things that you need to do? How do you enable the environment to be influenced by your own actions within your own home country? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Hendricks.
I'm an African.
Honorable Hendricks.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Africa must embrace a cyber civilization to fast-track a truly united Africa with the advantage that it can be the first virtual continent in the world. I am an African. The famous words of former President of South Africa, His Excellency Thabo Mbeki, has created a storm that today his words are in the hearts of every person in Africa, including South Africa. Under the leadership of His Excellency President Ramaphosa, it is not a pipe dream that the guns can be silenced in the continent. Africa, however, is not doing enough to put a stop to the new colonization threats. Our founding fathers have been very clear that individual countries on its own will remain weak after Uhuru and will only prosper when the drums beat and so social media erupt that we have a united Africa with not a single border. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hendricks. Shall we get to Honorable Papo? We have hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Deputy Speaker, I think firstly, it was a travesty of justice and an abomination for terrorists in Mali to attack the Timbuktu manuscripts, which are part of our trace of contribution of our continent to human civilization. And that issue, although the AU condemned it, not enough governments on our continent individually was able to condemn that abominable act of actually destroying some of our manuscripts, Timbuktu manuscripts in Mali. The second issue is that the speaker raised the issue of the socio-economic transformation of our continent as a recipe for stopping the guns, for silencing the guns. Because in an environment of socio-economic desperation, fanaticism, and extremism take root. The professor just mentioned in Mozambique, terrorists who are actually, and it's funny because they expect discovery of gas and other natural resources in Mozambique seem to have prompted the extremism in that sister country. So the issue of socio-economic transformation is I agree with the speaker, is very critical to deal with extremism, whether political, religious, or otherwise. The last issue I wanted to raise is the question of the building of productive forces in the continent. How do we, because President Deng Xiaoping heavily industrialized China for it to be the second economy in the world. And AU in its Agenda 2063 has a plan of industrialization with respect to the environment, obviously, building of roads, building of general industrialization as contributing to the unity of the continent. Now, in an environment of weak productive forces, how does industrialization happen? Because you need a working class to be part of an industrial Africa. And the peasantry is quite dominant and strong in our continent. But how do we make peasantry to become part of the productive forces in the realm of agriculture, which also has to be modernized in our continent? Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Chair, it's Honorable Nyambi and the Deputy Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Nyambi. Jomo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Deputy.
Thank you. Let me also join in welcoming this very informative and on-point presentation. Two quick questions. The first one, Honorable Speaker, it's in relation to this issue of silencing the gun. Is it possible to silence the gun if we are not yet addressed the historical fraud that happened in these different countries? That's my first question. Then the second question, it's in relation to what happened in that Berlin conference. In this century, is still right to recognize and be guided by the outcome of that Berlin conference in relation to the current order of Africa as is? Those are my two quick questions. Otherwise, it was a very informative and provoking presentation. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Lucas, Deputy Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Just an observation is that in the whole process, I think the Speaker as well as Honorable Papo have actually spoken about the socio-economic issues and as to how do we address the effects, the after effects, how do we deal with it? One thing that I think that is very close to my heart is the issue of the impact of this wars and this revolutions on women and children, and particularly the issue of gender-based violence. There is also something that I will say it's equally to silencing the guns, because in areas of conflict, those that are suffering the most will always be women and children. And sometimes you'll find even the very same peacekeepers that are supposed to serve the people or to protect the people are the ones that are doing these atrocities against women and children. So it was just an observation that in all of those, we need not forget that there is a very, very negative impact on women and children. And there is this scourge of gender-based violence that the whole of Africa is plagued with. Thank you.
Thank you. I should have allowed you to speak after Honorable Muhai, Deputy Chair, but it's okay. You will give us those 5 minutes. Honorable Muhai, okay. You're on the list. Go ahead. Chief Whip.
Mine is thanks, Deputy Speaker. My comment really is on research and development technologies, techniques to take Africa development at a higher stage. Does Professor Adebajo believe that our higher learning institutions are orientated to advance Africa's development? Can we say that continental projects unites Africa at a larger developmental stage? Because it is quite critical that we integrate Africa's economy in order to increase Africa's negotiating power at a global level. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Prof, the chance is yours to respond to those. I have a question, but I'll reserve it. I'll find space to ask it later. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members, for the really important questions. I'll try to answer them all. First question is about whether the colonial powers have departed. I think my answer was an unequivocal no, because I mentioned the fact that France has 5,100 troops in the Sahel and is pursuing still a neo-colonial strategy. I also mentioned that the US has 2,000 troops in Djibouti and continues to intervene in Somalia. And I think the US has some kind of military presence in about 18 to 20 African countries. And all of this, ironically, happened under the presidency of Barack Obama. I mean, George Bush, before him, had militarized Africa policy in terms of the anti-terrorism, but a lot of this was extended since that period. And these are things that we really need to worry about. The point isn't
I think the professor is disconnected. We will try and reconnect him.
Are you succeeding there? Try and get.
Are they making progress, Deputy Speaker?
I think they will let us know as soon as we get through to him again. Yeah, it's a pity that this has to happen just when he was getting into the responses. Yeah, let's just give them a little chance.
Okay.
Okay. Wendy?
Madam Speaker, let Madam Speaker not, she must mute. Chief Whip, what are you saying?
I was asking whether you are still there. Please, you must have a comfort of a chair still saying something.
No, we are here. We're waiting to get, we're hoping that we are reconnecting. And as soon as that is done, we'll proceed.
I was just saying, Deputy Speaker, is it possible for me to raise one or two questions whilst I'm waiting for the professor to join in?
And who do you expect to answer that question, Daddy? Or you just want to leave them in the
No, I raised the questions, and if
there's nothing wrong with us going into a discussion.
Into a discussion, yes. You can continue discussing.
If possible.
Yes. No, we can take a decision at soon that we proceed to raise. Maybe there are other people who, like Ambi, has questions, and let's do that. Yeah, we can always raise them with him when he comes back. Please go ahead, Ndate Masondo.
No, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
I wanted to raise the question on the high command idea as raised by Kwame Nkrumah. The professor did say that it was an idea before its time. What I want to raise in this regard is how far is the AU and the African leaders in making this idea a reality in terms of today's development. The second question was on Islamic terrorism, and I'm happy that Dango and others are here. Perhaps they can also assist clarify this question. I've always struggled to understand what the objective is and the goal of this kind of terrorism. Whether the issue is being pursued by ISIS or similar type organization, but just to have a bit of a clarity on the objective. And lastly, this is just a general question that I think applies to all of us. Often in my little experience, when I interact with people, they know very little about Africa. Some people don't know, for instance, whether Cameroon is in North Africa or in East Africa. Just understanding of the map. They don't know where Guinea Conakry is, or where a country like Central African Republic is. Now, the ignorance on Africa is not just limited to the map. It's also on the kind of information that the professor was able to make available to this forum. So we need to also find ways and means of ensuring that Africa is very informed about itself. Just the basic information, so that Africa can be able to meaningfully debate its issues way beyond the AU or PAP or similar institutions. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else with another question?
The speaker.
Yes. Hello.
Deputy Speaker, the speaker indicated that you want to say something.
Oh, no, okay. Deputy, Madam Speaker, please go ahead.
No, I thought whilst we're waiting for Professor, some of the questions we can deal with. That chairperson who is asking about the High Command. The idea of the High Command is the same idea which we came up with the standby force of Africa, which meant that every country would contribute. At the time, it was mooted just after our first democratic elections. South Africa was going to be contributing towards it. And if you remember that we had enough practice with the DRC, Burundi, and so on and so forth, then Africa's resolve was that it was better for us to police and to soldier ourselves rather than to allow the superpowers to continue to run our affairs. I think that ran into a bit of a problem because, one, we were not speaking the same languages, and that is why immediately
Yes, ma'am. You done? You done, Madam Speaker? Are you done, Madam Speaker?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm saying that I am done in the sense that I got cut somewhere. My mic went off.
Okay.
So I'm simply saying that the standby force would be the continuation of that idea of Kwame Nkrumah, which we must follow up on.
Okay. I agree. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In fact, the professor also indicated for example, the Nigerian contribution towards the High Command, but also he also mentioned South Africa's contribution to the peacekeeping force as an example of the problem of financing and logistics at the heart of the implementation of the idea. But I agree with you and the chairperson that this is an idea with trying to find ways around resources, because this is an area that presents a potential weakness. And on the question of and so on, I do element of peace often referred to as, but the terrorism that operates differently, not just from an extremist religious basis. So terrorism. To ask anybody else, including as suggested by the chair, Honorable Dango, any perspective there? You are an internationalist. You're still Ambassador Dango, by the way, so you must have all the answers. Honorable Dango? Who else would like to contribute to the question? Is he still with us? Please check. Please check whether the Honorable Dango is still there. In the meantime, in the question of the last question he raised was that there's evidence of lack of knowledge and appreciation of the African continent in South Africa. I would imagine this is what he meant, and therefore what we can do about it. In the past, the situation, I suspect, was slightly different. We used to interact and hear about the leadership of the continent. I don't know whether it was as a result of the underground struggles and the work that was done in the country with people outside of the country, giving and providing leadership and information and knowledge about the continent and the struggles that were going on. And so you had a relatively interesting understanding of the African dynamics in the country than it is now. That situation has changed. I guess post-94, it looks like we became very inward-looking and not sufficiently internationalist, if I may put it that way. And so it has led to us not appreciating the rest of the continent's issues and dynamics properly. And I guess this is where the role of the public broadcasting and our education system plays an important role, or should be playing a critical role in closing that gap, because we now are able and politically in charge of these systems in broad terms, that they should be doing this work of education of the African continent and the world, so that there is better appreciation of the environment in which we are conducting our affairs. Madam Speaker, Chairperson, I suggest that I ask the Deputy Chair to speak, and then perhaps so that we can move to the next item. It looks like the Prof is having difficulties. Is that okay?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Yes, indeed, the Prof is having difficulties to log in again. But I think we have also reached our time, because we indicated that the whole lecture is going to be up until 12 o'clock. So I just want to express our appreciation, particularly to our Chief Whip of the NCOP for arranging this very important, like you call it, seminar, because it really was something that we've been speaking about, particularly with Speaker, because I know this is a topic that is very close to our heart. And I'm actually very grateful that we've been able to get such an esteemed Speaker today as Parliament. We have all very good coverage on 448, and I think we have been quite there. And we also want to then, but with that said, Deputy Speaker, we will allow you to do the final vote of thanks and have your final say. But just from my side, I really must appreciate our leadership and our team, particularly the team that at such a short notice that could get us such an esteemed author and speaker in the person of Professor Adebayo. So over to you, Deputy Speaker, just for the final remarks. Thank you very much to everyone.
I think the Deputy Chairperson, your reference to Speaker is really correct. He is an outstanding, knowledgeable Africanist, and I think he provides us and motivates us, inspires us to really understand the African context and its relationship with others in the world and the kind of things they are up to here, so that our sovereignty in our hands. So I think that message, and this recommendation, more or less, I think are useful to follow through. The tendency for countries that reach peace, but then degenerates and slides back to war, is what I found very, very crucial. So that how do we create interventions that are sustainable? This is absolutely important. And finally, the need for this agenda to be an ongoing matter must be our collective responsibility. So let's contribute to its building and proceed with it.
Can we just, Deputy Speaker, Deputy Speaker, before we go offline, the Speaker just want to finally say something before we totally close. Right. Speaker, over to you.
Madam.
Speaker. Unmute. Speaker, can you unmute, please? Can speaker just unmute, please? We can't hear you. There you are. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are now.
Can you hear me now?
Speaker. Yes.
Yes, we hear you now.
I was saying, Deputy Chair and Deputy Speaker, the matters which the professor is putting to us falls squarely on the responsibilities of the Joint Standing Committee of Defense, because they, on behalf of Parliament, are responsible. This is the work we used to do, Libutoni Yengeni. This is the work we used to do, even Libu Committee when Comrade Nosifio was sharing intelligence, because it is the public representative who can advise sometimes. It was us who made sure that our corps are in exercise with our neighbors. It was us who made sure we understood the systems of other countries. What he is referring to, the cooperation between the Nigerian forces, the Ghanaian forces, South Africa, Zimbabwe, where Tanzania was, because we knew that ultimately the standby force must come out of us, and therefore, as public representatives, we also had a responsibility to keep an eye on whether we keep on retraining, upskilling, re-equipping our military so that we can carry out this responsibility. So it is not just about passing laws. That job is done by the Portfolio Committee on Defense. It is the morale and functionality of the Defense Force that falls squarely on the Joint Standing Committee of Defense. So I wanted to say that it's things we have done, it's things we have looked at, but things we have not been able to follow through on because of the finances. So we must more and more begin to look at how we strengthen sometimes the hand of the executive to get the resources they need to make sure that we keep the guns down in Africa, because it is only with effective, legitimate people's armies that we can silence the guns. Thank you.
I think that closed the discussion on a very high note, and marching orders from the... Yes, Deputy Speaker. I think we are just closing. And I think that is the marching orders and the responsibility of Parliament once again re-emphasized. With that, thank you very much to everyone from my side.
Africa's time has come. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Siabong.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you,
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mama Tandi.
Thank you, Mawini. Mama Bibi.
Bibi, how are you? Bibi, Siabonga.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, Mama.
Members, you are live. You are live on TV.
Okay, at least it is now done. It is done.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye,
I'm going to log out now.
Lock. I'm leaving. Okay.
It's a pity we lost the professor. Shame. He couldn't connect again. I think his internet connection went down. Pity. Let's see.
Thank you.
Everybody happy? Can Zama? I think is Zama here. You're still co-host, so if I leave the meeting, you'll be okay. Do I need to leave the meeting running for how long? Madhu? Your mic.
Thank you, good people. Otherwise, I'm going from my side. I was struggling at first to connect, but everything went good.
Oh, you said, okay, great.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. How do you like my background, Madhu? See, it works for me. Oh, that now.
That is good, Ravi. You are muted.